We are live. Thank you everyone for joining the Pittsburgh Racial Justice Summit. Our session is about methods and techniques to control the narrative. We're going to be introducing stories of resilience and success. I'm Andre Jacobs, founder and president of Supreme Network. And my panelists are Raymere Waters and Laura Schenk. Panelists.
I think you're muted, Raymere.
Apologize. Yeah, my name is Raymere Waters. I'm born in Pittsburgh, just a young man looking for opportunity.
And I'm Laura Schenk, also born in the Pittsburgh area. And yeah, very excited to be here talking at the Racial Justice Summit.
The workshop agenda.
Yeah, so our workshop agenda today, we'll hear from Andre. So Andre has a really incredible story. He's going to tell us all about his life. And then we're going to talk about some method and techniques for critically looking at media. And following that, we're going to have a breakout group. That'll be about 10 minutes to kind of practice some of the things that we learned. And then we'll share things we've discussed. And following that, we'll hear Raymere's story and follow with a call to action and some time for questions, as well as the survey that everybody's, I'm sure, accustomed to filling out now for the summit. Okay, so we'll get started onto Andre's story.
Thanks everyone for joining and being here. I wanted to talk mainly about the feeling I had as a child and, as a teen that I had no control over my life. I believe that everything and, everything around me and, all the conditions was my life. I believe that I had no input or control over that, or chartering, my future. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh's like my second home. And I had three brothers. One of my brothers got killed. And we grew up in a very abusive household. We witnessed my mom being abused. And we were also abused. I mean, it was just a lot of, me and my brothers fought. It was just a lot of violence in that household. And emotionally, I think that it stunted me. It stunted my growth emotionally to a point where I didn't communicate. I didn't say a whole lot. And the only thing you would really see is when I acted out. I remember when I was about young, I don't remember exactly the age, how old I was, but I remember when we were very young, around this time in this picture, around that time, when these altercations used to happen inside my household, that my mom used to put us in a closet in our house. She would tell us, she'd say, call 911 and go to the closet. And we would go to the closet and there would be, all types of things being thrown and, noises and stuff like that occurring, in the household, while we was, in this dark closet holding on to each other. And that's my first feeling that I had no control over my life, that there was just nothing that I could do to make life better. And then out into, stepping out into the world outside of my household, going to school, I got into a lot of fights. I was acting out the things that I saw at home, in school, and in my community, amongst my friends. I fought a lot of my friends. And, I got kicked out of a lot of different schools, and I didn't feel like I had control over myself. And it wasn't long before I was assigned a counselor through the school system, which was basically my segue into the system. And what that counselor did was, diagnose me, tell me, all of the different issues that I might have had, but nobody really talked to me about, what to do about what was going on in my household. So that issue was, largely unaddressed. Like people knew, my whole neighborhood knew, my whole neighborhood knew, everybody I encountered knew what was going on in my house, but nobody, really talked to me about or helped me understand it. So I felt like that was just something that, you really have no control over. So I was sent away when I was about 6 years old to Hershey Medical Center. I guess I think it was supposedly for evaluation, some type of commitment. And I remember the night before I actually went away, my mom was cradling me in her arms and crying. And that confused me even more because I felt like this is a situation that I have no control over. And I didn't understand why she felt like she didn't have no control over it. That the system was just working in a way that disadvantaged me in my life. So I went to that placement. I was there for some time. I don't feel like it was useful. If anything, it was a lot of damaging experiences I had while I was there. It was basically like prison. It was a lot like prison. We stayed there 24 hours a day. I never remember getting any type of visitor, though I may have. I really don't remember that process while I was there. They control, when we got fresh air. They control what we eat. They control when we shower. They, when we did take a shower, we had to allow a random staff member to come in and observe our bodies with, soap and stuff like that on us to tell us if we were washing properly. I thought that was extremely intrusive. And when I stayed there for about 6 months. It was a 6-month commitment. I was released back out. I don't remember learning anything. They were very violent too. Anything that you didn't do, they would, anything that you didn't do that you were supposed to, or that they told you to do, they would react violently, grab you, slam you around. I still got brush burns on my body to this day from when I was like 7 or 8 years old. From how bad, and rough that they used to handle us. If you didn't want to take medication, they would use force. If you didn't stand up in the corner long enough, they would use force. Like anything, to me, it was like any, justification they needed to use force, they would. So, in my life, that was the message that I was receiving in my household, in my community, and even in the placements that I was going to, was that if people don't do what you want them to do, you use force. And so again, like I got into a lot of fights, and at some point I got kicked out. I got kicked out of every school I ever went to. So I eventually went to a placement called Eastern State. I was committed there. I was there for about two and a half years. We did get visits there. We did get to go home sometimes on home passes and stuff like that. But there was a lot more freedom. You got to play basketball. You met a lot of people and stuff like that. I actually met some people there who I knew from home. But I don't feel like I learned a whole lot. I don't feel like the experience was very productive. There was still, a lot of violence. There was still a lot of the system telling me what the problems was, but not really being useful or effective in fixing those problems. And I was released 2.5 years later to another placement, a group home out in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. After like 2 months, I went on a home pass and refused to come back. And a funny thing about it is they came looking for me. I used to wear gold teeth back then at that time, and like gold caps. and they came looking for me at one of my aunt's house, but they didn't have my picture. So they came and they knocked on the door and was like, yeah, we're looking for Andre Jacobs. I was like, oh, okay. Let me go get him for you. And I went, got my coat and left out the back door. And when I came back home to my aunt's house later on that day, everybody was talking about the people that came and all of the things that happened after that. And was like, well, the part we can't figure out is who told these people that they were going to get you and bring you to the door. I was like, oh, that was me. So everybody was laughing. It was like, but even as I remember that story, I remember that like the system was not that concerned with me. They was really concerned with just a process, and I just felt like a subject and not really like anybody within that system was, trying to help me. So because I wasn't going to school, I was, out and about, causing mischief. By the time I was 12 years old, we was stealing cars, selling drugs, carrying guns, smoking weed, drinking, doing everything that we wasn't supposed to be doing. Those were the influences that was around me. That's what I was seeing in my community, in my neighborhood, all my friends, that's what they were doing. Nobody was really doing anything constructive. Like I didn't know anybody. There was no influences in my life that were doing anything constructive. And I don't mean like just living a normal life in terms of maybe just going to work or maybe playing sports. There were some guys that we knew that were playing sports and stuff like that. But for the most part, it just seemed to me like there was like amongst my generation, everybody was living the lifestyles or living up to what we were seeing in these movies, what we were hearing in these songs. And people would literally justify the stuff that they were saying or the stuff that they were doing by something that they heard in a song or something that they saw in a movie. Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, Biggie Smalls, Tupac. I mean, this is the stuff that we were literally being raised by because our fathers wasn't raising us. Our moms, they were loving us and giving us instruction. But when it came to what we're supposed to do in this situation or these scenarios, we were not guided by anything that we were hearing at home. And what I saw and what I experienced was just a lot of misguided behaviors. So I got caught in the system for selling drugs when I was 13. Went to our detention center, our juvenile detention center, placed on probation and was released. By the time I was 14, I was arrested for armed robbery. I didn't actually do the robbery. My cousin was the one that did the robbery, but we looked alike and we hung together. So I actually was convicted for it. And I came home when I was 14. I escaped. I talk about that story in my book, A New Direction. But I escaped from there, went home, and when I was caught with a gun. And that's when I was certified as an adult at the age of 15. Usually you only get certified as an adult for violent crime. But I was certified as an adult for nonviolent offense, carrying a firearms without a license, and sentenced to 3 years and 8 months to 10 years. Now, I missed out on so much school. It wasn't actually dumb. I just didn't go to school. So I never really finished anything. And by the time I actually went into the prison system, the adult prison system at the age of 15, I couldn't read or write, write or spell or anything. So, at least on that front, I didn't understand the significance of what was happening, that I was actually being certified as an adult, being thrown into the system, or what I was really to expect other than what I might have seen in the movies or what other people might have said. The attitude in my neighborhood was that you go to prison and you come home. You go to prison, you do your time, and you come home. There's nothing really, in the books about, excuse me, there's nothing really in the books about what takes place in prison. So when I went to prison, I was 15. I couldn't read or write. The only thing I really knew how to do, that I knew how to do, was fight. So stepping into the prison system, my whole mentality was, I'm not going to let anybody take advantage of me. And that was really the only thing that I had to stand on. I didn't have a whole lot of people skills. I wasn't communicative. I didn't know how to express myself. And you know, that was really the law of the land. My first day in prison, I got in 3 fights. My first day, I was on the block, a block called the Jungle. The block that's known as ENF is known as the Jungle. My first day in there, I got into 3 fights for basically with rival neighborhoods about stuff that happened while I was out in society. I was moved to another block and got into a fight over a food truck. Basically, an older, bigger guy tried to take the tray. So we fought about it. And I don't know if everybody can still see it, but I still got the scar right here from that incident. So I got into a lot of incidents and stuff like that. And it got to a point where I was just generally rebellious and combative. And that rebellion started taking the form of advocating. You know, like I started speaking out against things that I felt the system was doing wrong, that I felt the prison staff, you know, were doing wrong, that I felt like the conditions in the prison, despite the fact that we were in prison, were not humane. And my experience going to prison and doing 23 years in prison is that prison is like a plantation. Once I start reading and understanding the system, prison is just like a plantation. You know, as far as the staff, you know, and many times the landscape, the mindset of the people in there, the way they treat you, the food, prison is just like slavery. So, you know, I got a lot of, so even though I didn't really know how to write, I knew how to recognize what was wrong with my environment. And I was a good listener. So I always used to listen to things and find out what was going on. I would hear other guys say that, you know, this is a violation, that's a violation, this ain't in a rule book, you know, that violates this rule and that rule. So when issues would arise and I was in that situation, I would tell people like, yo, I feel like this is a violation of my rights, you know, or are they allowed to do that? Or, you know, this is something that they're not supposed to do. One of the things they used to do was cuff us to the door for 8 hours. 8 hours straight, they would cuff us to the door. You'd be on your knees like this, you know, to the door. And they made us shower with handcuffs on and shackles on our legs. It was stuff like that that had me like, this can't be legal. So I would have other people write complaints for me and I would put my name on it. What I didn't know is that even though they say that you're allowed to complain, you will actually be retaliated against for complaining because the prison guards perceived it as you trying to get them in trouble or, you know, cause them to lose their job for doing something that they wasn't supposed to be doing in the first place. So you had the option to endure the conditions, which most people do in prison, tolerate the conditions, or complain about them. And when you do complain about them, almost inevitably, you will be retaliated against. So, you know, for me, you know, that retaliation came in the form of denial of outside exercise, denial of showers, you know, sometimes denial of toilet paper, anything that they know that you need that they have control over, they will deny you in retaliation. So I experienced a lot of that. Eventually, then the misconduct system is, to me, I always look at the misconduct system like it is the whip. It's the whip, just like slavery, it's the whip that the system uses to install fear in you or coerce you into doing something that they want you to do. Many times many times the misconducts are unjustified, fabricated, they manipulate them all different types of ways. And every time you do get one, you get more time in solitary confinement. We call it the hold. Solitary confinement is the cosmetic term that people use nowadays, but it's the hold. So I did a lot of time in the hold, even in the county jail. That's where I spent most of my time at, because I got a lot of misconducts. But eventually, like, I start, like, really focusing on what the system was doing, and these misconducts and all of that, and these grievances, these internal grievances that I was, becoming, more and more interested in. So I committed to learning how to read. I had the same book. It was called The Last Dime. It's The Last Dime by Mario Puzo. It was like an 800-page, 1,000-page book. Only reason why I was willing to read that book, because it was a mafia book, and that's just how poisoned my mind was at the time. And that's the only type of book that I was interested in. So I would commit to trying to read that book. I got a dictionary. I would look up words. I would ask people, what's this word? How you pronounce this word? And I just kept learning words that way. Everywhere I would go, everybody I was around, I would ask them about words, how to pronounce them, how else could you use them, and stuff like that. And that's how I learned how to read and write. I did that for years. And I would use like books. I would use a book that I was reading as like a study guide and compare what I read and compare a word in the book, go in the dictionary, see what it means, and then keep reading. So it took me like a year to finish that book. But I ended up finishing it, ended up realizing that I actually liked it reading. And that was the first book I ever read in my life when I was like 16 years old. So then I got into books, got into reading books, got into, studying the dictionary and learning. But I also discovered that I had a knack for understanding the law and understanding and actually using this stuff, communicating in a way where I could make my claims understood. So I got good at it. And the better I got at it, the bigger of a target I became by the system. So they focus more on me because I was actually good at it. Unfortunately, in our culture, the bigger of a reputation that you have for violence, the more people will follow you. So I had a big reputation for violence because I got into a lot of fights and I was really good at fighting. So a lot of people listened to me, a lot of people followed me. But eventually I'm like, why are we always fighting each other? Why are we always going against each other? Why are we not going against the system? Why don't you feel the need to complain about the conditions that we're under? The way that our visits are ran and so forth and so on. So I start kind of redirecting the energy towards fighting the system and standing for something bigger. And, as the years went on, I just became, more into advocating, going against the system. And, that created more problems for me on other levels. Like it started with, denial of access to my legal documents, food. I'm placed in cells with no clothes for days and weeks at a time, being denied food for days at a time. I mean, there were times, man, when guys would have to sneak me food and sneak me water because the prison would not feed me. And I experienced a lot of that. I know other individuals that experienced a lot of that. And it really made me dislike the system. And for a long time, I fought that, emotionally. I didn't understand like why human beings treated other human beings this way. I just didn't understand. And I learned so much about prison that was different from what was being said in our communities. Like I said, like they just told us that you just go to jail, you lift weights, you come home bigger, and so forth and so on. But then they don't say nothing about like these strip searches, like, these strip searches on a daily basis, the way the prison guards talk to you, the food, I mean, just the overall, environment, the depression, like everything is just a terrible experience. And I didn't understand why people didn't like really appreciate like what was happening, like what, what they're actually doing to us is worse than anything we ever experienced in society, in our communities. But guys will be more hateful towards each other or to their families. But when it came to the system, they wouldn't, put up a fight. So I wanted to understand that. And the more, I start reading these different books, reading about slavery, I understood that, all slaves played different roles. Some of them were fiddlers and some of them were, house Negroes or field Negroes and so forth and so on. And I ended up embracing, the idea that I was a field Negro, that I was not favored by, the slave master. I was not favored by the system. I was not, that I was disfavored for being, a voice and not living the reality that was carved out for me. And so, there became a point where, I stopped letting my pants sag. I stopped calling my friends nigga. I didn't like when people called me nigga. I started, practicing not cursing. I still curse to this day, but at the time, I was, just like really trying to find myself and shape my character, and really just move on an elevated scale. And I did that, and I did that pretty well. So a lot of people listen to me. So as I became better at advocating and filing complaints and things of that nature, I would encourage other people to do the same thing, and that became a problem for the system. So they would turn up the abuse, like physically beat me down while I was handcuffed, just do everything they could to try to break me out of that mindset that, that we had rights and that we were supposed to stand up for, against whoever. And that led to new charges, violent altercations with the prison guards, where they would initiate altercations. I would fight them and I would get charges and get more time in prison. And during that time too, in those initial stages of those type of incidents, I was still at a mindset that, I don't have a lot to say. If the police came and tried to talk to me about an incident, I would look, I don't want to talk. I don't have anything to say. But what I learned is that they specialize in creating a narrative. They create a narrative. They create a story. They create a profile, and they repeat it over and over and over again to a point where anybody who hears about you repeats that narrative. They do it to the people, they do it with the people that they talk to, all your reports and stuff like that. And I didn't really appreciate how serious that was until I start getting involved in civil cases and criminal cases and actually looking at my files and the stuff that they used to write. So much of it bogus, so much of it like total lies. Now, let's not make a mistake. I was terrible at one time, but I mean, even with how bad I was, when I looked at my files, it was real lies, but it was still a popular story because that was the narrative that they created. So over those years, during those times, I was learning how to play chess, learning how to read, learning how to write, learning my history, learning my personal history and my history, my cultural history, being Black and what that meant. And I just, became, deeper involved, in that question. And it got to a point where, I became so proud of the things that I discovered, about, Black people, that my perspective and mindset on myself started changing, and how I perceived others started changing. I was no longer willing to fight this guy or that guy over something petty. You know, I learned how to communicate. I learned how to have these conversations with these guys and say, hey man, look, if I offended you, I apologize. You know, what I meant, what I said, you know, when I said, what I meant was, et cetera, and so forth and so on. And I've learned that, you know, through communication, and a change of perspective, we can resolve, you know, a lot of those issues that would otherwise turn into altercations, you know, on a day-to-day basis, and the things that we see happening, you know, in society right now. And, you know, all of these different communities. So all of these different things took me to a point where I also changed my perspective about the prison staff and administration. I start getting to a point where I felt like that I'm not the victim. Like, I refuse to be treated as a victim or perceived as a victim. I start telling the prison guards that, you know, you're basically my brethren, that, you know, you're basically my child. You know, like, if there was no me, there would be no you. So, you know, I kind of looked at them on a lower level than how I used to look at them. And that start changing how I thought about our relationship and our dynamic. You know, I no longer felt powerless. So as time went on, you know, I started filing lawsuits as a political statement, as me aligning, you know, the overall cause and advocacy agenda from prison with those on, you know, with those out in society also fighting, you know, against the system. I felt like we were all as the so-called oppressed, trying to you know, be heard and make change. So, you know, I started connecting with a lot of different organizations, building a network, building a system, and, you know, I became very good at filing lawsuits. I lost my first lawsuit, and when I examined that first lawsuit that I lost, acting as my own attorney, I realized that I really wasn't emotionally, even though I had a good case, I had a case that was true and that actually happened. Mentally and emotionally, even as I look at my transcripts, I did not go in there believing that I was actually going to win. And I believe that as long as you don't believe that you're going to win, there's no win to be had. But when I went in for my next case, I went in that courtroom knowing that I was going to win. I had one of the biggest cases in Pennsylvania, possibly in the legal system. And I was making some big claims against a lot of powerful people, claiming that they were retaliating against me, conspiring against me, you know, suppressing legitimate claims, retaliating, so forth and so on. And you know, their response was, that's absurd. You know, this guy, he's upset, he's violent, he's this, he's that. None of this is true. I got to a point where I ended up defeating a lot of the attempts that, you know, they made to, you know, throw my case out. And it got to a point where they had to either settle the case or go to trial. Everybody said, settle the case. This is a serious case. They're not going to let you win. The government this, the system this, the system that. But in my heart, in my spirit, like, I knew that I was going to win that case. So I refused to take the money. I was like, I don't care. I don't want the money. Like, I want to go in the courtroom and tell the jurors and tell society, like, what's really going on in the prison. And I'm going to win. So I think only 3% of cases filed by prisoners in the country actually make it to trial. Of that 3%, not many of them win. So the odds were against me. Everybody said that, you know, they didn't think that I could do anything with the case. All the attorneys that I would write say, yeah, man, I want you to be involved in my case, et cetera, they would say that they didn't think I was going to win. And if I did win, that it wouldn't be big. There's an attorney, Martha Conley, who actually attended one of my trials. She reached out to the newspaper and said, hey, man, I really think you should follow this guy. I really think you should come to his trial, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he told her, no, that's okay. He's probably not going to win anyway. So when I did go to trial, they put a lot of things in place. Forced me to wear an electroshock belt. I had to wear shackles, had to wear handcuffs. And just in my mind, though, because I understood the system, because I understood the dynamic, between me and them, and that their overall agenda was to always, control how you're perceived, and put some type of pressure on your mind. I just had to put in my mind that none of this matters. None of the stuff that you're doing matters, because when it's all said and done, I'm gonna win. When it was all said and done, I won. I proved that they retaliated against me, that they fabricated paperwork, they lied, they got on the stand, they lied, went in the courtroom, I told the jury, he's lying. This guy's lying. He has these big credentials, he has a PhD, and so forth and so on, but he's lying, and I'm gonna show you. Look, first he said this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't have no attorney. I was acting on my own behalf, speaking for myself, because even at that point, I was learning that nobody's going to speak for us better than we speak for us. Nobody is going to care about your case more than you care about your case. And if you have the ability to communicate that and represent that, then you should. So that was why it was important to me to be able to, I don't want you to, come in here and because, what I mean, like an attorney, because they have a certain regard, for these prison staff or whatever the case may be, to try to water down my message. Maybe you misunderstood. No, you didn't misunderstood. You know exactly what you was doing and you lied, So that was my message. That's how I wanted it to come across, and that's how I presented it. And I won. I ended up winning $185,000 verdict. I had an all-white jury, and all of the defendants in my case, except for one, was Black. So for me, I like the fact that I won. I like the fact that I proved, that I proved what prisoners was trying to prove for decades. That if you're an outspoken person in the prison system, that you will be retaliated against. And that they will do anything that they need to do that. But what mattered to me the most was that society actually acknowledged my humanity, and from that, I felt, empowered, and I felt a renewed freedom, and like I had a sense of control over my life. So from that time, even though my situation got worse, even after I won the lawsuit, even during the case, they were retaliating against me. Issuing me misconducts while I wasn't even in the prison. Listen to me. Issuing me misconducts for stuff that happened in the prison while I was at court. How is that possible? This is how serious it was, how consistent it was. And, they basically overplayed their hand in that case, because when I actually presented it to the judge, I went back from court with a misconduct in my cell and brought the misconduct back to the judge and say, Your Honor, how is this possible? How did I do this when I was at court all day yesterday? How is this possible? And the judge agreed. She was like, when whatever y'all got going on with this man in this prison, keep that over there. But he's in court. He's in here every day. He's been here for the last 10 days. How is this even possible? But they had grown so used to, total dominance that they didn't realize that they were, in an arena that was really, not controlled by them. And, they was willing to go above and beyond to try to, keep my mind focused on what they wanted to be focused on. I ended up getting a lot more time in prison. I did a lot more time. I had 3 years and 8 months to 11 years sentence. I did 23 years in prison. Every time I went up for parole, I got denied for years and years, even though I was, even when I got to a point where I didn't get misconducts and didn't get in trouble, I was still denied parole. I got more time from these altercations and these incidents with these prison guards, and in a scenario where the DA forged my signature. He forged my signature 2 times on one of my cases and got me 10 years. I ended up getting 10 more years in prison because of that. I ended up overturning the case later, but it was years, years and years down the line. So, my sentence and my time was spent really evaluating myself, the world around me, studying, learning, trying to become a better person. And, when it came down to it, to come out to the world, a better person. But through it all, and mainly through my many years of litigation and the adversarial relationship that I had with the system, was that regardless of what somebody has to say about you or what they write about you, at the end of the day, through our actions and through our commitment to the cause, we have the ability to control the narrative. Out of all the things that I've been through, and even to a point where I wanted to give up, where I thought I could never, I couldn't go on, that I couldn't make it the next day, that none of it was worth it. I got to a point where I started thinking, like, as long as I'm not dead, I can still share my message and be of service and, move the agenda forward. So, much of my time was spent learning different methods, whether it was writing letters, connecting with organizations, filing lawsuits, improving myself, improving my communication skills, publishing a book, from when I was in prison, and so forth and so on, that I'm not gonna let nobody tell you who I am. I'm gonna tell you who I am. And what this other person may have to say is not, I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're the president. I don't care if they run a prison, if they run a corporation. The only way you know about me is if I tell you about me, not what you read in the news and any of that stuff that they do to try to control how people perceive you or to try to turn people off of you or whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, I feel like everyone, as long as they're alive, has the ability to change the narrative and control the narrative. However you feel that it's not in your control, in many cases, like there are a lot of things in place, like the media, the mainstream media and news and so forth and so on, that make us think that we don't control the narrative and try to speak for us, about poverty, about prison, about, race, about all of these different things. Is really individually up to us first, and then collectively up to us as a whole to control the narrative. And that coming to that realization changed everything about my life. I mean, from all of these different cases I had, bogus cases. I mean, a lot of this stuff happens in prison every single day. Every single day, the kind of stuff that they charge me for happens in prison every day. But because it's me, they want to try to drag me in court with new charges and more time and so forth and so on. But when it was all said and done, I was supposed to do 50 years in prison. I eventually freed my mind enough and organized my system enough that I gave all of my time back, overturned all my cases, continued winning lawsuits. Oh, the first lawsuit that I won, $185,000. This is the biggest lawsuit ever won in Pennsylvania history. As a prisoner acting as his own attorney, only surpassed by another verdict that I won years later, $300,000, acting as my own attorney, no legal assistance, acting as my own attorney in the bogus riot charge that they lodged against me and 5 other men. And I also settled, multiple lawsuits and so forth and so on, acting as my own attorney. I approach every situation with the idea that I control the narrative, I control the outcome. And I just believe that if we, individually first understand that we control the narrative, then collectively we prevail as a whole. Collectively, we have a much stronger group and a much stronger organization on a worldwide scale because you're connected with people who actually believe in themselves. And as long as we believe in ourselves, anything is possible. Now, when it comes to this media, all right. Now, I got to a point where I stopped watching the news. I stopped watching the news. I met this guy. His name was Matthew Norris. Guy I met in prison. He was really smart guy. And just one day, I mean, by this time, I didn't read. Excuse me. I didn't watch the news or read the newspapers anyway. I would read certain newspapers that I knew were geared towards the stuff that I was into. But other than that, I stopped reading the newspaper and watching the news. And he said to me, in conversation, he was just telling me about himself. We was just getting to know each other. And he said, oh, I don't read the newspaper either. I don't need any more proof that the world is effed up, And I just want to know, like, do people actually watch the news or read the newspaper and say, well, I feel very, very motivated, now I want to go out and do this? Or do people watch the news and say, I feel so much better about America now? No, the news is giving us a bunch of bad information, a bunch of negative information, and everything that they could be doing to inspire people, guide people, and give people the information they need to become better and be better, and for us to be actually moving forward as a unit. They don't do. They choose not to do. And that is by design. That is by design. They're much more powerful. The system is much more powerful with us divided and always being at each other's neck, categorically, racially, economically, and so forth and so on. That is what they prefer. They prefer it so much that they spend billions of dollars on a daily basis to run news and to feed us information and biases and misinformation on a day-to-day basis, 24 hours a day. Any time of the day, you can go on the news and get some bad information. So, this is the case, the $6 case. So only thing we did was protest conditions at SCI dollars. First thing they say out their mouth. There's a lot of footage out there too. There's a lot of and the people are going to see these videos. I've been trying to track them down. I've been trying to track these videos down for a while, but I know that certain groups and certain people have these videos of the actual clash, so-called riot between us at the prison and the prison guards at SCI Dallas. We fought that case for 6 years. They spent millions and millions of dollars to try to create a narrative that wasn't true and try to cover up what was actually happening at Dallas. I was at Dallas from May of 2009 to April 29th of 2010. It was 13 deaths at that jail. 13 deaths. At least one suicide that they provoked. The guy name was Matthew something. I forget his name. His family ended up filing a lawsuit and winning a lawsuit against SCI Dallas. There was a lot of corruption happening at that prison. And for guys like me and some of my other friends, our goal was to always try to get in a better position. We did not want to stay in solitary confinement forever. So we were always trying to get in a better position to, pursue whatever agenda we had, or relationships we had with organizations, books that we were writing, and so forth and so on. So it was not to our advantage to try to always be in some type of conflict with the prison guards. Our thing was just, fall back and pursue the cause silently, through litigation. That we're at odds, that we don't agree on a lot of different things. We don't have to, act that out, in real life. So that was the thing. We would try to keep a distance between us and the prison staff, but, they were so petty and so, power struck that they felt like they had to always initiate stuff with us. So they would do this in the form of denying us access. For 1 month, they didn't give me a shower for one period. They didn't give me a shower for like 3 months straight. For like 3 months straight, I did not leave my cell at all for shower, recreation, nothing. And then during that time, they played with my food, dumped my food in the tray slot, and they attacked me, and they opened my door one time and attacked me. That didn't work in their favor. So that case represented the clash, a culmination of all of these other events that was happening between May and April of the next year, where we got to a point where we said, all right, well, they had put one of our friends in the torture chair that night, put him in a room, opened all the windows, and put him in a torture chair from that night all the way into the next morning. We said, that this is enough. We want to speak to our representatives. We want to speak to your supervisors. We want these particular guards fired, so forth and so on. And instead of them doing that, instead of them trying to, come to a resolution about it, they decided that they wanted to arm up in riot gear and shields and pepper spray. They sprayed us, beat us down, then charged us. Some of us they transferred, some of us they didn't. There was a report, a 93-page report that chronicled all of the abuses that prisoners in solitary confinement and at SCI Dallas as a whole were being subjected to by the prison. It wasn't just us. It wasn't just Andre Jacobs, saying that this is a corrupt prison and there's a lot of changes that need to be made. There were hundreds of people in different blocks and different units saying the same thing. But what do? So when they get on video, the first thing they say is, there is a protest being led by Andre Jacobs. Any chance they got, I was always the target. I was always somehow behind it. Yeah, so in retaliation for us, bringing that about, bringing that investigation about against SCI Dallas. This is what came to that. I guess this is the Vice article. We were featured in Vice magazine. It was we were featured on CBSnews.com. I guess a whole lot of it was a national, possibly international thing too. We had some supporters in the UK about it. It went on for years. I represented myself, at the trial. And the guys that end up standing with me, it was Dwayne Peters and Carrington Keys. They stood, all the way 100%, all the way down to it. We fought the case and we won. Something that a lot of people in society who looked at the case felt the same way, that they try to classify it as a riot, but it wasn't a riot. It ended up in a mistrial, which was in our favor, and they decided not to pursue it again because of all publicity, and for certain all of the supporters who came to the trial, promoted the case, and so forth and so on. And this right here is a famous, infamous image of Kyle Rittenhouse and his attorney sitting behind the judge. And I mean, I just like, this is so significant because I've been in the courtroom many times. I've been in the courtroom many times, not just for my cases, but for other people's cases, just sitting there, just waiting and so forth and so on. And I've never in my life seen a criminal defendant anywhere behind a judge or sitting with a judge. Look at them. They look like, you know, a group of buddies, a group of friends looking, waiting on the outcome of a particular issue. And what we need to do is first understand that the media is only designed, mainstream media is only designed to control us, to control how we feel and control how we see things. So when they have a particular agenda for a certain case, such as the Kyle Rittenhouse case, and they want an outcome in a certain way, they have the ability to create moments like this to shape the outcome and get the type of outcome that they want, to humanize the defendant, to send a message psychologically that this guy is supposed to be a murderer, but here he is sitting, standing behind the judge on his case. And the message is that this guy is not dangerous. This guy, if this is somebody that I can trust, then this is somebody that you can trust. And what a lot of people don't understand is the subtle moves and words, like the changes in tone, the way a judge might look up during jury instructions and stuff like that to try to communicate a message to the jury to get them to do what they want them to do. So, you know, we see a lot of imagery like this. Of course, Lara's going to talk about, you know, the science behind it. She's basically, in my world, an expert, you know, when it comes to this, you know, this technology stuff, the algorithms and so forth and so on. But she's going to talk a little bit more about that. But I mean, we just need to be super conscious about the media's function and how that impacts us collectively, how we're constantly having these conversations about race, about poverty, about prison, about, you know, whether this person was supposed to get off or that person was supposed to get off, when all of it's really designed to divide and conquer. All of this stuff is divide and conquer. And here's the prime example of this case. We spoke about this case on TikTok, the Theodore Edgecombe case. When you compare the difference between how they report this case, you know, the media reports, and most people never even heard about this case. I posted this on TikTok, and everybody said that they never even heard of the case. Nobody came in there and said that they were, oh yeah, I'm familiar with this case, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody knew about the case. And I'm sure that there are people here who have never heard of this case. It's been compared to the Kyle Rittenhouse case, but the obvious difference is what? Theodore Edgecombe is the guy who killed Jason Clearman. The first thing they say when they report about him is they put his credentials on here, his job, and all of this different stuff, because they want to make this person guilty through the media. And we know through the O.J. Simpson trial, through you know, all of these different cases that are introduced to us through the media, and can, you know, we're basically, you know, riding the wave of the media, you know, what the media thinks and what the media is saying, how they showed the one scene of the reaction to the O.J. Simpson trial by whites, how whites reacted and how blacks reacted. And this is because they were so invested in the outcome of the case because of how media promoted the case. This is a good friend of mine, Bug Life, 1978. We both we actually collaborate on TikTok to do we do a legal discussion on TikTok Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 o'clock. You know, he posted on his page. I also posted on my page, and it was like thousands on my page and his page, thousands of comments, and thousands of views. I think his video did like 20,000-30,000 views. Mine did like 12,000 views. And there's a lot of focus on this, you know, there's a lot of focus on this case right now where Theodore Edgecombe was pursued this guy, Jason Clearman, tried to hit Theodore Edgecombe, a cyclist, with his car. When he didn't, he jumped out the car. His wife was driving. He jumped out the car. He had a knife. There's been, confusion about whether the knife was in his hand or whether it was in his pocket. But from the evidence I heard, it seems like he actually had it in his hand. His wife tried to put it in his pocket or take it out of his pocket after the fact. But long story short, this guy, Jason Clearman, pursued Mr. Edgecombe, and Mr. Edgecombe shot and killed him. Mr. Edgecombe actually tried to get away, but Laura, if you could play the video to try to
shooting trial. Defendant Theodore Edgecombe is set to stand trial for the shooting death of an immigration attorney. Court TV's Chanley Painter has the details.
The case involves Theodore Edgecombe, accused of murder in the shooting death of immigration attorney Jason Clearman. Police claim it started out as a verbal altercation while Edgecombe was riding his bicycle in Milwaukee last year, and it ended with Edgecombe shooting and killing Clearman. Prosecutors say Edgecombe provoked the attack, but defense attorneys say Edgecombe was the victim and pointed to this surveillance video showing Clearman following Edgecombe, then getting out of his car and approaching the cyclist moments before Edgecombe fires.
This is a clear case of self-defense, and we look forward to and maintain confidence in our judicial system to establish the same.
The case has drawn comparisons to Kyle Rittenhouse, who claimed.
On the docket tonight is the deadly road.
Now notice that the incident happened in September 2020. Why are we not seeing footage about this case? Especially when it sounds so much like the reverse well, not so much. I mean, it's really a totally type of different incident, but as it pertains to the right of someone to defend themselves or stand their ground, it should be discussed along the same lines or with the same energy that the Kyle Rittenhouse case was discussed. It happened in September 2020. I just now heard about it a week ago. And there's been many other people who said that they never heard about it. Why is that? Because mainstream media decides which cases become popular. And that's unfortunate because we all have access to social media, and if I believe that if we focus, if we were committed to using social media in, a more productive and polarizing way, amongst organizations and individuals, that we could have more power in educating the people about cases like this that exist and putting some type of focus in actually, highly influencing the outcome in terms of, for example, he's still in prison hasn't been able to pay his bail. I feel like, we should all be collaborating to get this guy out of jail. They always like the NRA, I was going to talk about that too, but the National Rifles Association, they always come to the aid of people who they support. So I mean, people that we support, we should be able to come together in an organized way, and I mean, at a bare minimum, generate awareness about their case and allow people to show support in a way that they're able to. But did you notice also the first thing that they said about Mr. Clearman was that he's an immigration attorney? What does that have to do with the question of whether this man acted in self-defense, whether Mr. Clearman, put him in danger, put his life in danger? The guy said, Mr. Edgecombe said that this guy approached him with a knife and said that he was going to kill him. And our prosecutor actually said that Mr. Clearman got so close to him that he actually touched his forehead or grabbed his forehead before Edgecombe actually shot him. So, I mean, he really waited until the very last minute to get away from this guy, and as a last resort, shot him and killed him. And he's still being treated as as a defendant and as a criminal rather than as a victim. So when it comes to self-defense laws, I've read this book too called, I think it was called Justifiable. It wasn't Justifiable Homicide. That's a different book. I forget the name of the book. I read a book about criminal defenses in the judicial process, and it showed the history of how each criminal defense became introduced into the system. And every single time a criminal defense was introduced in the system, it was because the system didn't want the same outcome for a white person that would happen if it was a black person. Now, this outcome was something that was supposed to happen in every case, but because they didn't want this person to go to prison, they created a new defense and made it a part of the system for people to be able to use. So when I see cases dealing with self-defense laws and people say self-defense was not made, to be used by black people, or it's made to disfavor us, every criminal defense was made, it was not meant for us to be able to use. So when you try to use, I actually fought 2 self-defense cases. I was exonerated twice on self-defense where the aggressor, not the victim, they were the aggressors, were white. They were prison guards. And I claimed self-defense. I had all white juries both times. And they found me not guilty on all charges. So I know that there are that is not a white issue. It's not a white issue or a black issue or any of that. That's just how the media tries to make it. It's that these attorneys have to argue the case properly. That's the issue. They have to argue the case properly. And we as individuals and as a collective have to stop putting so much stock into what the media says. And just the last thing, you can leave that up, Laura. The last thing is, when it comes to people, let's just say white people in particular, right, who come to Kyle Rittenhouse's aid and say, I believe that's self-defense. Okay, I disagree with you, but if that's your true belief, okay. My question is, how come you don't come, if you believe in self-defense that much, and it's not because Kyle Rittenhouse is white, how come when a black person is in a self-defense scenario, you don't come to their aid? Why doesn't the NRA speak out for Edgecombe or anybody else or any other person of color who claims self-defense? If it's not about race, if their organization or their agenda is not based on race or white supremacy or some other agenda that's not, people-based or humanity-based, then why don't they come in all of these different scenarios? This looks like something for an expert.
Oh, okay. So we're so this slide, we're not going to get into too many details because I want to make sure Ramir gets time to tell his story, and we'll be sharing the slides later. And there's a lot of details in the slides that I think you can definitely walk through afterwards. So, but I'll show this one example. So like Andre's talking about this bias in this entire case with Kyle Rittenhouse versus Theodore Edgecombe. This kind of bias is also represented in artificial intelligence and computers that are appear to be making decisions based on what content to show. So for example, in the search results, you can see the same kind of bias as in the individual images. So there's the focus on the deceased and kind of the humanizing of Kyle Rittenhouse in these images. So the big point in this section of the slides is that within what we consider artificial intelligence and what's presented often to us as very objective and neutral technologies, all of our existing and society's existing biases are part of that. So we're gonna skip ahead to Ramir's part of the Ramir's story. And yeah, please, these slides will be available. Also, additional links to learn a lot more about other techniques for critically looking at media, as well as thinking about AI. So, okay, and we're gonna pass the break over. So, okay, Ramir, go ahead.
Thank you. For those who don't know, my name is Raymond Waters. I grew up in Pittsburgh, the east side, Homewood to be exact. Kind of a rough neighborhood. I'm pretty much talk about my upbringing, what my household was like. So I have 4 siblings in total. I'm borderline a middle child. I have an older brother, there's me, then I have 2 little sisters. So growing up, it was rough, man. We bounced a lot, didn't really have a dad. My dad was pretty much sentenced to prison for drug and murder charges before I was born, so I didn't really get a chance to connect with him much. He came home, so I seen him a couple times while he was in there though, but he bounced a lot, so it was really hard to see him because sometimes he was in a prison that was like 4 hours away, and we just didn't have the funds or any type of transportation to go see him. So that was a big blow to me, but that was very difficult. And then I'm just just living life, day-to-day life, not having a dad and saying nothing but temptation around. It was just difficult to be positive or to be original. Where I was from is like you're pretty much your character is shaped by what you're around. So even talking to older people, some coke dealers, weed dealers, I even sat down, had heart-to-heart moments with murderers, like people legit did murders and saying nothing wrong with it because that's all they knew, but even through the wrong trials, they still pass down gems and knowledge to people or to the young kids because they seen they were living wrong, but were too deep to really, think they can make a difference. So I really learn from them lessons and the knowledge they gave on me, and just seeing my mom struggle. She was a single mom. She raised 3 of her kids. She didn't really raise my older brother too much. He was talking about my grandma. So, but seeing her raise 3 kids and seeing everything she sacrificed for us, just made me humble and made me pretty much keep my mind on the bigger picture. Like there's more than life that was just around us, and then even my sisters, trying to uplift them because, none of her dads were in her life. My sister's dad is still in prison now. He raised me as well. While my dad was in prison, and he actually was in prison with my dad. So yeah, he was a good influence. He did wrong as well, but he had a heart of gold, and it made me really look at people different. Like even though you do wrong, your heart, you still can be a good person. And so I took that, I took little things like that to form my own character. And yeah, just trying to see the bigger picture, do all the hardships and things like that. And one thing, it was just it was just rough. I can say it was real rough. But thank God I never fell into the system. That's something I am glad for. My father was a foster kid. His mom and dad really couldn't keep him, and he explained his stories to me that similar to Andre's, very very mistreated. He ran away from a couple foster homes because the foster parents weren't good. So, I'm blessed for that. My mom kept a roof over her head. I can say that for the most part, and for my sisters as well. But what saved me and really got my mind going was pretty much sports. I played football all my life. My mom kept me active. Me and my sister both. My little sister wasn't born yet, but she kept us active. So I made my connections and my bonds pretty much through sports, really. Got a lot of my social skills. Like my mom she was definitely a good mom, but she didn't teach me much about life. It was just pretty much work, maintain, and love, but she couldn't give me the life skills that I needed, like the importance of going to school, writing a check, the importance of keeping your word, the importance of an image, and standing on what you say. She wasn't able to teach me those things because she wasn't really taught them. So it was pretty much a lot of on the fly freestyling, but school was something that was solid. It was something you went to every weekday at a set time, and it was structured. It was a way of structure. Or my school I went to wasn't structured at all. I went to West House Academy. If I don't know, it's a decent school now, but when I went, it was full of the same thing I was around. Like the old heads, or the older kids who were doing wrong, they went to the same school I did. We all played ball together. So, it was just like being outside. It just, we had people watching us. So you had to move better. But getting into sports was really set my mind apart from the rest and seeing that I can be original. I didn't have to be what was around me. I did well in school certain times. Like during middle school, I did pretty well. But eighth grade, it started going downhill, like to the point I started thinking like I'm gonna drop out. Like my home life was getting bad. Really getting older, really starting to fall into the temptations of the streets and things like that. And school was never really important in my family. My mom never really stressed what school was, just a place that you went Monday through Friday. So I didn't really, once I got like eighth grade, I really didn't feel the need for school. I was just there because that's where my friends were. But um, but I quit playing football in ninth grade. So ninth grade, and I ending at eighth grade, quit playing football. But then I started realizing where my life was going and tried to get back. And the only one thing that was productive for me, that was sports. So I tried to go play for my team. I made the roster, but my grade point average was a one. No, it was a 6 point. Nope, sorry, it was a 0.67. I pretty much had my whole report card was terrible. So instead of me giving up and falling into getting down on myself, I chose to stay with the team. And go to study hall every practice, even though I know I couldn't play any games. Coming to practice, working 10 times as hard as everybody else, just to make sure I was serious, about changing my life for the better. And the coaches were very, very good. Some of them were very good help. They came to my house. There was time I didn't have lights or heat. They helped my mom pay the light bill. They bought us Thanksgiving one year. I ain't have no winter coat. They went out and got me a winter coat. So getting that love from people that wasn't even related to me showed me the love really do exist out here. You just gotta find the right people to network to bring yourself up, the people that really care. There's good people. There's always a diamond in the rough. So no matter how bad your neighborhood might be, what you seeing, even what Andre went through, that's a great man right there. He's the definition of what a man is, and he came through so much, and so can everybody else. Just gotta be able to find those connections. Keep your head up and see that bigger picture. There's more to life than what you're around. Pain's temporary. That's what was in my mind. And sports helped me realize that. It built me mentally, physically. It built my confidence. It built my social skills. Being a part of a group of people. I'm a group around a good kids with a good mindset. We're here to play ball. So being around that energy was real good, man. Then out of high school, I had a couple college offers, but my home life was still wasn't too well. So I pretty much fell into a state of depression. But a little later on, I met Andre. I met a couple other good mentors, but believe it or not, I know Andre personally. It's my first time really hearing this story. So, shout out. I gotta definitely call him after this. But me and Andre might have been the biggest, because when I met Andre, I was in need of a mentor. The mentor I had before, he branched off. Me and him, he did all he could for me. I felt like, we kind of lost contact. But then Andre came out of nowhere. I was working at Staples, and he just random guy asked me to take a picture, man, with a smile of gold. So I'm saying we took a picture with him, me and my boy Sean, and he reached out, man. He's saying he came to my job just to check up on me. He always put me on try to always upgrade my game. He's a person that really cares, and I try to do what I can for people to come my way. Try to embody his methods and his styles. And just show this love out here. So this people who's going through the struggle or been through the struggle, just know you got it. And you're great, king, queen. You're great, and I wish you the best. You're gonna be good. That's it for me.
So we have a small poll. Folks can fill it out quickly. And then we'll have a few closing remarks as well, but the moderators have posted a link in the chat to the post session and post summit surveys. So don't forget to fill those out as well. Okay, so Andre? You're muted.
Are you gonna go back to where you left off, or?
Nope, we're gonna finish up because we have a few minutes left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so go ahead and tell us about Supreme Network.
Yeah, there's Ray Mir. Y'all see Ray Mir right there? Yeah, so Supreme Network, our mission is to bridge the gap of poverty by connecting business leaders and with aspiring entrepreneurs to help them realize their greatness. And it's a social empowerment, group, and it's based on the idea that together we achieve more. Together we achieve more. If we identify ourselves as power players, and contribute our resources, whether our resources be informative, our resource might be just you showing up. It may not be money. It may be your the fact that you're popular everywhere you go, that all all of the different clubs, or you're in a book club, or whatever your connections may be or your resources may be. If you extend those resources to the next person, you're definitely giving them an opportunity, whether they take it or not. So, what Supreme Network is trying to accomplish on a local scale and as well as on a global scale is for all of us as individuals to realize that we have something of value to contribute. Just like Ray Mir said, everybody's great. Everybody's great. There's winners, losers, and people who haven't discovered that they're winners yet. So, we're here to help people discover that no matter what they've been through. I think my life story, Ray Mir's life story, and millions and millions throughout the world, life story of overcoming, and triumph is evidence that no matter what you've been through, you can still, come out victorious in the end and win. So with that mentality, we want, a worldly community through Supreme Network where, we disseminate, and collect those type of stories as inspiration, and, most importantly, connect people with successful business leaders who can help them take, whatever they're trying to do to the next level. Yeah, we got a Patreon page. You can go to our website, supremenetwork.org, join. There's a lot of different articles and stuff that I've written and other people have written. Our sweatshirts, my books. I think one thing what I didn't mention, when I was in prison, I wrote 7 books. 5 of them I published since I've been out. One of them is mentioned here, New Direction. It's a memoir. It's a summary of my life. It also includes a lot of my poetry. I was thinking about, featuring some of my poetry here, but get the book, you can see some of it. And you follow some of my social media stuff, you'll see I actually perform some of my poetry on there. And stay tuned. We're going to be putting out some poetry videos and stuff like that too. I also do speaking engagements. I speak for the Boys and Girls Club. I spoke for them several times, and some other organizations and events. I got a big one coming up out on Monday. Actually, I was booked as a speaker. So, if you're an organization or you're involved in organizations or have other outlets or resources for speaking engagements, you can, book me or email me for that as well.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone.
Oh, that's it. I would like, I wish that we could stay here, all day and connect and communicate. Is there time for questions? How much time do we have left?
I think so. So we'll defer to the moderators. I know people need a few minutes to answer the survey, but I think we can take questions.
before we start the questions, can I just shout out my Instagram page real fast?
Yeah, you can. It's in
Um,
profile though on here.
I'll put it in the chat as well, Ramir. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So follow the brand. It's called No Cap Captains. That's on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We pretty much uplift confidence, our day-to-day life and all positive things like that. And we have some music coming, so tune into that.
No Cap Captains. Yeah, while she's doing that, I just wanted to point out too, Laura, when I actually met Ramir, I was trying to learn how to send an email to Staples to have something printed. Coming out of prison after 23 years, I didn't know how to do nothing. So, he was one of the people that worked there. He assisted me. He walked me through every step and helped me. Then he actually became my contact and my resource at Staples for when I was getting my business cards printed, when I was getting my banners made for my podcast, like all of that different type of stuff. Like, he became a resource for that. So, I mean, to me, like that's a prime example of how the stuff that everyday people in the community can be resources to other people,
Yeah, it looks like we have one question I saw in the chat. So are there things we can look for in media that signal bias or reveal that something's information? So are there any like telltale signs?
Yeah. So
that you see?
Yeah. So the first thing that I don't know if I emphasized it is that anytime you're receiving media from someone, you should check the source. Who is this person? What does this person believe? What other things does this person write about? What is this person's belief system? What is their agenda? Are they giving me this information to further their agenda? Because we know that as people, we tend to speak about the things that we think are important. It's not objective. Like there's some type of reason that we're giving this person this information. It may not be, we might say, yeah, hey, such and such is we might say to the next person, hey, that such and such, I seen such and such out in the mall with this girl or that guy or whatever the case may be. And it may just be informative. It may be because, we don't like this person and we know that this person is really in a relationship and shouldn't be out with some other girl, but one of the telltale signs to pay attention to is in media is comparing what the incident is about with the information that is actually given to you. So a prime example is the question in the Edgecombe case was, did this person act in self-defense? Ask yourself, does the fact that this alleged victim is was an immigration attorney, how does that weigh into or factor into the question of whether this is self-defense? So you got to really weed out, you got to really understand, what is this about? This is the same thing that you would do in your day-to-day interactions, like the relationship that you have with people on a day-to-day basis is the same relationship you should have with the media. Why is this person telling me this? That's what I want to know in the first place. If you come and bring me news, I want to know why, what's your whole thing? What is your agenda? Why are you giving me this information? What do you want me to do with this information? Then there's a question of, is it true? Is this information true? I'm looking for conflicts. We're looking for conflicts in the information that you give. We're paying attention to see if anything you've told us actually contradicts what you're saying the subject is about or what the issue is about. So, I mean, a lot of it's just the same relationship that you have with people is the same type of relationship you should have with the media times 10, you know, times 10, because you don't actually, you're not in a position to actually question these sources who are on the news. When you're dealing with an individual, you can actually ask them, hey, well, what did you mean when you say that? And how is this part relevant to this? And, you know, so forth and so on, that you actually have access to them. So, you know, it's really a truth seeking or a truth finding process if you decide to engage at all.
Yeah. Thanks, Andre. Okay, so we're a couple of minutes over. Ramir, one thing, can you post your Instagram handle in the chat before we sign off? I think I might have spelled it incorrectly.
Sorry, I was muted. I said, no, you pretty much had it right. I just had, I missed the Z. It was 2 Z's instead of 1.
2 Z's. Okay, nice. Okay, thank you everyone very much.
Thank you,
have
everybody.
a great rest of your night.
Yeah, thanks for
Great time at the
attending.
summit.
Thanks for being a part of this process. We appreciate your support. Follow us on all social media.